Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is a video about just kind of setting up basically organizing yourself or building out static pages. Of course, when you start doing like non-static pages, like using Express or start working with single page applications like React and Vue, the way you're going to organize your code is going to be somewhat different. But if you're just doing a basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript page, this is going to be a solid way to sort of think through your setup. And if anything, it's probably a good idea to just build the boilerplate that you can copy every time you want to spin up a new project. So let's build out a boilerplate. So I'm going to go to my DOM folder and make a new folder. This is going to be called my boilerplate. Okay. And basically my boilerplate, what I'm going to do is first create my index.html. And then I'm going to create 3 folders in here. Okay, we're going to create a CSS folder. We're going to create a JavaScript folder. And we're going to create a image folder, typically IMG. So this way you can organize, because if you start using lots of pictures, a lot of maybe multiple JavaScript files, or you start bringing in libraries locally instead of just instead of using CDNs and lots of different CSS files, it's nice to have them all in sort of one place, because you actually might want to break up some of that stuff into multiple files. Okay. So now what we want to do is create their basic starter files. So in our CSS, we're going to create a style.css. Okay. And then images, you just leave that empty until you actually need images. And in JavaScript, we'll always put our initial, usually just app.js is kind of how you start. And then now let's link these files in our index.html. So HTML boilerplate. There we go. Okay. And the main things we want to make sure that we add is our link tag for CSS. There we go, link for CSS. And it's going to be slash CSS slash style CSS. Okay. And then we're going to link our JavaScript file. So script tags, script source. Okay, app.js. I'm going to add the defer keyword so I don't have to worry about any DOM issues. Cool. Except that's going to be in /js / app.js. And we want to make sure that all this is working. Okay. Index.js. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Okay, let's close all that out. Okay, so if I go to my app.js, I'm going to just do a console.log. It's working. It works. Okay, save. And then also I want to test the CSS file, so I'm going to create an h1. Just do an h1 hello world. Save. And then in my CSS file, just do a quick h1 color orange just to see if that all works. And then we know that our 2 files are connected. So with that, let's open up our index.html. Open with live server. Okay, that'll open up in a second. Just waiting for Chrome to open up. There we go. Oh, okay, so let's take a look. Did either file get connected? Okay, so the CSS file we still got to work on. And that's 404 not found. Okay, so whenever you see this error, so it says like MIME type text HTML is not supported, that generally means, it doesn't mean there's actually like an issue with the MIME type. It just means it's not finding the file. That's why it's not finding the actual MIME prefix. So that means we need to figure out, and let's take a look. So it's trying to access this URL, which that looks fine actually. Okay. But if it doesn't want a relative URL in that fashion, let's do this. Let's just take, first let's try off taking the slash. Okay. Okay, that works. Okay, that's what we need to do. Take off the slash. Because the URL initially has a slash on it, and then there it works. Okay, so that fixed it. Cool, cool, cool. So that's why you always want to test that out before anything, because you want to end up building a bunch of stuff and then get stressed out for 30 minutes of debugging or hours of debugging to realize you just didn't connect your files right. And that's why it's nice to build a boilerplate, because then you know the files are connected. Cool. So now with that, we want to build out some boilerplate in our CSS that allows us to quickly work. So we always want to, generally always going to want to have a root selector. That's where we're going to put all our variables. Okay. So what I usually do is I'll set up my root selector, and then I'll basically put the variables I always use. So I always have like a main color. Okay. And then I'm just going to, right now I'm just going to put in just whatever. So orange, doesn't really matter what it is now. I can change it. And again, variables always have to have the 2 dashes in front of them. So main color, back color, as in background color, red, and then I usually have a color that's an accent. Okay, green. And again, you can just change these colors based on your color scheme, but this way you have those variables throughout all your code. And then I always have 2 fonts. So we'll say title font. That I'll set up all my H1s with. Okay, and we'll just say Arial. Okay, and then we have basically a text font, which is for all your normal texts. And I'll just set it up as Arial again. Again, you can change it when needed. Cool. Then I always like to have, okay, I always like to have all the margin on everything set to 0, all the padding on everything set to 0, and border sizing, or it's actually box sizing set to border box. What that does is that instead of like margin and padding adding to your width and height, it's included in your width and height, so that way you don't have to do all that funky math. And then I also like to add an outline, and I always make it like 3 pix solid gold. That just helps me when I'm styling. Pick solid gold, but by default let's leave that commented out. Okay, and then you can bring that in as you needed while you're developing. It just puts a line around everything, so that way you can kind of see where stuff is at. Cool. And then I always like to put a little comment here, just showing this is like all my setup styles. So, setup code. Then I'll highlight that and comment that out. There we go. Okay, this just makes it easier to look through my style sheet if I put these little titles here and there to show what's going on. And then I want to make sure that all my headings use the title font. So I do like an H1, H2, H3, H4, 5, H6. And I'll just do font, use the variable. Okay, and then we'll use title font. So all I have to do is just change the variable, and it's automatically going to change all of those to whatever. And the last thing I want is a body styling. Okay, and that's going to have, oh, it's supposed to be font family. Make that happen. There we go. And here again, font family, and that will be var, which means we want to use one of the variables, and this will be text font. and that just make sure that all my fonts are set up. So basically, if I set up my variables, I choose sort of my 3 main colors that I kind of want. So usually I have like a main sort of color, sort of a background color, a secondary color, and again something just like to splash a little color here and there. So that way I have those 3 right there. Then I choose my 2 fonts. And in this case, now I can set up, and then all I have to do is just do all my, project styling. So I'll just make another little thing here. We'll call this project styles. Cool. Okay, now this file's fairly set up that now I can just copy and paste it. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to do 90% of the time is already there. So I don't have to necessarily just keep retyping all this every single time. Okay. So there's my CSS. Now for my JavaScript, I'm going to do something like this. Okay. I generally don't want any code to run until we get to my app logic here. Okay. So this way I can define, so basically no functions are invoked, no lines of code that are actually runnable happen till below this. So this way I can define everything above it, and I don't have to worry about anything being undefined necessarily. Okay, and then here, I'll create a section that's just my global variables. Okay, and then what's a good way to do it, just kind of helps think things through and also prevents like title collisions. Create an object called global. Const global equals, and then you just add all your data in here. So any kind of data that you want globally available will be part of this global object. And that way, in case anything else has like the same name later, it won't collide because this is any variable here is a property of global. So we'll say like global.number 5. Okay. Okay, and then we'll do another one for just, our functions. Okay, and again, it's just organizing this stuff into objects just allows it easier way to remember. Okay, so functions. So then I'll do another object called const funcs or func. And this will equal another object, and then I'll just keep adding functions in there. So I'll say const, give me one, and that'll just literally be an arrow function that returns the number 1. Okay, and I can just keep adding more functions to that object. So it'd be like func.giveMe1 would be the function. Or actually, we'll just make it give me. Keep this even simpler. So just to illustrate a point, we'll make it give me, and it'll give you whatever number you pass in. So we'll pass in a number, and then we'll literally just return you that very same number. There we go. Pretty much as simple a function as you can get. And just to kind of show you, now I can put this down in my app logic, and I can do something like, I'm going to console.log the result of the function. So we'll say func.giveMe. Okay, global.num, and then kind of thing here. Basically, also what's nice about this is like this kind of helps me know that these are functions, where they're defined. This kind of just reminds me, okay, where in my code did I define these numbers, because they're part of that global object, that func object. Okay, and now let me just run that code real quick so you can see that it works. Okay, undefined. Wait, this was called number, wasn't it? Yep, it was called number. So global.number. Save. Well, let me save my style sheet as well. Save. Let's go back over here. And there you go. See, console logs 5. So the stuff works. But then I would create a separate object for event handlers. Okay, this is a CSS file. Okay. Okay, so we'll call this my event handlers. Okay, and then we just, oh, let me put that above the app logic. Everything should always, I always like everything above the app logic. So that way everything is defined before the actual logic runs. Okay, event. And basically here we would do something like this. So I would do const handle equals, and then we'll say like click. Okay, const handle click, and that'll just be a function that console logs hello. Okay, save. Okay, so now let's actually try that out. So let's go back to our index.html. I'm going to add a button just to show you that that works. Button on click equals handle dot click. Okay. Click me. There we go. Let's save it. Now if I click that button, and there you go. See, it works. Hello. But now I know that all my event listeners are in that section of my code. Okay, it just makes life easier. And the only last thing we want to add is probably add the jQuery code. So we go to code.jQuery. So that way if we want to use jQuery, we can. Okay, so uncompressed. Copy the script tag from jQuery. Head over to our code in our index.html. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a section called libraries. So like any CSS libraries, any JavaScript libraries, load them up before your actual custom code. So put that there. Add my defer tag, or add my defer there, and then I'll create this section, make this my CSS and JavaScript. Kind of do that there. Again, just makes it nice and neat, easy to read. Cut. Save. There you go. Okay. So now I know where to look for stuff. So if I want to add like Bootstrap or other JavaScript libraries, I could add it right over here. So usually what I'll do is maybe add like 3 or 4 different things that I might use very often, and then just comment them out when I'm not using them, or take them back when I am using them. But it's already there, so I don't have to hunt around with it, and I can just literally copy and paste this boilerplate and use it as needed. Okay, and it's just by having this sort of setup, it's always kind of easier to think through my code because I just put stuff where it belongs. Okay, so this is a good way if you're doing, like, again, a static page. So this means CSS, JavaScript. You're not really doing anything backend. You're probably calling maybe an API. You're not going to this extent where you're using React, Angular, Vue, because if you're using, again, React, Angular, Vue, the whole workflow is different. But this is a great place to get started building out your website front ends. And again, once you have the boilerplate set up, it's just a matter of copy and paste. Okay, so yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that and found that informative. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.